The space station floated among the stars like a giant metal city. Celestia Prime was the biggest meeting place in the known galaxy. Today, warriors from hundreds of different worlds had gathered here. They came to show their weapons and make deals. The annual military exposition was the most important event of the year for anyone who cared about military power. Corporal Daehyun walked through the crowded halls with his hands in his pockets. He was a human from Earth, built solid and strong with dark eyes that watched everything. Next to him, Private Jiwoo carried a plain metal case. Jiwoo was younger and thinner. His eyes kept moving, looking at all the strange aliens around them. The aliens were everywhere. Some had 6 arms. Others had scales like reptiles. Some floated through the air. Some had too many eyes. All of them were bigger, stronger, or stranger than humans. One alien caught their attention. Commander Velthar stood nearly 8 feet tall. His body was covered in purple armor that looked like insect shell. He had 4 eyes and 6 limbs. His species, the Zentari, looked like giant praying mantises. Velthar had many scars. Everyone could see he was an experienced warrior. Further down the hall, another alien was making a show. War Master Kroll was demonstrating his armor. Kroll was massive. His reptilian face had rows of sharp teeth. His green scales shined under the lights. He wore powered armor that made him even bigger. A crowd watched as he crushed a steel beam with his bare hands. The metal bent like paper. Kroll's voice boomed across the hall. "Humans, you are late!" "Did your old ship break down?" Many aliens laughed. The Thakans were known for being proud and rude. Kroll was their greatest warrior. Daehyun answered calmly. "We had to fill out customs forms. Paperwork does not care who you are." More laughter. Commander Velthar moved closer. His steps were smooth despite his size. "I'm curious. What weapons does Earth bring to show us today?" Jiwoo patted the metal case. "Standard equipment. Nothing special." A smaller alien covered in blue fur made a chittering sound. "The Deathworlders bring their standard equipment to compete with our finest weapons." That word made everyone pay attention. Deathworlder. Earth was classified as a Class 12 Death World. That meant almost everything on Earth could kill you. The gravity was high. The weather was violent. The animals were dangerous. The diseases were deadly. Most aliens could not survive even 5 minutes on Earth's surface without protection. Humans had evolved there, which made them interesting, but not necessarily respected. "We were invited to demonstrate," Daehyun said. "So here we are." Around them, other species continued their demonstrations. The Zentari showed living weapons that could eat through starship metal. The Vorlax displayed plasma cannons so hot they turned solid matter into gas instantly. The Kelsians had weapons that made objects fall apart at the atomic level. Every demonstration was impressive. Weapons dealers took notes. Military commanders whispered to each other. When it was time for the human demonstration, most of the crowd had left. A floating jellyfish-like creature came over to them. It was the exhibition coordinator. "Humans are scheduled next. Please go to the demonstration chamber." "We need safety protocols turned on," Daehyun said. The coordinator's tentacles twitched. It seemed amused. "Safety protocols? For what kind of weapon?" "Kinetic projectile weapons," Jiwoo answered. Kroll's laugh sounded like grinding rocks. "You brought rocks to throw? Maybe sticks to hit us with? This should be entertaining." "Something like that," Daehyun agreed, his face showing no emotion. Velthar's antennae moved forward with interest. "Kinetic weapons are very old technology. Every civilized species stopped using them thousands of years ago." "Maybe we are not that civilized," Daehyun said simply. The demonstration chamber was built to contain dangerous weapons. Energy shields lined the walls. The observation area was protected by thick, transparent metal. About 50 aliens bothered to come watch the human demonstration. Most of them clearly expected to laugh at the primitive Deathworlders. Dr. Boram was already waiting inside. She was a slim woman with glasses and a patient expression. Ambassador Hyun stood beside her in his formal suit, his face unreadable. "Are you ready?" Ambassador Hyun asked. "Ready," Daehyun confirmed. Jiwoo opened the metal case. Inside, resting in foam padding, were 2 objects made of metal and black plastic. They looked simple, almost crude. There were no glowing lights, no humming power cores, no exotic energy fields. They looked old-fashioned compared to the elegant curves and bright colors of alien energy weapons. Several aliens actually stood up to leave. They thought this was a waste of their time. "Those are your weapons?" Kroll asked. They do not even glow or make sounds. They do not need to glow, Dr. Boram said calmly. She picked up one of the objects. Her hands moved with easy familiarity. This is called an M4 carbine. It uses a principle that your species abandoned long ago, but humans have spent 700 years making it perfect. She started explaining the chemistry. She used words like nitrocellulose and gunpowder. These words meant nothing to most of the aliens. They looked confused. Where was the power source? Where were the energy systems? How did it work without batteries or fuel cells? Daehyun took the weapon from Dr. Boram. He moved like someone who had used this tool thousands of times before. He pressed a button. A box dropped out of the weapon into his hand with a click. Then he slid it back in. The clicking sound echoed in the quiet chamber. I need a target, he said. A dummy appeared at the far end of the chamber. It was made of special gel designed to act like living tissue. It could survive hits from most energy weapons for several seconds before melting. Daehyun raised the weapon to his shoulder. There was no charging sound. No lights powering up. No humming of energy building. He pulled the trigger. The sound was like thunder. A sharp cracking bang that made several aliens jump in surprise. Then another bang. Then another. Daehyun fired 3 times in less than 2 seconds. The gel dummy exploded into pieces. Not melted. Not vaporized. It simply blew apart. Chunks of gel flew across the chamber and hit the walls. The violence of it was shocking. The chamber went completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Commander Velthar was the first to react. He rushed forward on his 6 limbs to examine what was left of the target. He pulled out scanning equipment and started taking readings. This is impossible, he whispered, his translator making his clicking voice sound stunned. The kinetic energy transfer is enormous. How fast were those projectiles moving? About 715 meters per second, Dr. Boram answered. For this particular ammunition type, a Vorlax engineer pushed forward. But where is the power source? Where does the energy come from? Daehyun ejected the box from his weapon again. He pulled out a single brass cylinder, barely longer than his finger. He held it up so everyone could see. Everything needed to fire one shot is contained right here. The explosive propellant, the ignition primer, the metal projectile. It is completely self-contained. Jiwoo opened the case again. He pulled out several more of the boxes that held the ammunition. Each magazine holds 30 rounds. A soldier normally carries 7 magazines. That is 210 rounds total. The aliens stared in disbelief. Someone asked, no power cells at all? No power cells, Jiwoo confirmed. No charging stations needed? No charging stations. No special fuel? No special fuel. Commander Velthar's mandibles clicked rapidly. This was a sign of deep thinking for his species. Show me the complete specifications of this weapon. Dr. Boram made a holographic display appear in the air. The specifications looked shockingly simple compared to standard galactic weapons, but then Velthar saw the numbers for reliability, for maintenance requirements, for the temperature range where it could operate. The weapon could work underwater. It could work in the vacuum of space. It could work in extreme heat or freezing cold. Your soldiers carry how many of these rounds into combat? Velthar asked quietly, his 4 eyes fixed on the humans. 210 is standard, Daehyun repeated. More if the mission requires it. Kroll pushed through the crowd. One weapon! You show us one simple weapon and expect us to be impressed by this? Daehyun smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. Warmaster, this is not our most powerful weapon. This is not even our most powerful rifle. This is what we give to every basic soldier, every single one. The room suddenly felt colder. The implications were sinking in. If this was their basic weapon, what else did they have? Ambassador Hyun spoke smoothly into the silence. I think we should schedule a more detailed briefing session. Would tomorrow morning work for everyone interested? Commander Velthar's 4 eyes remained locked on the ambassador. Tomorrow morning would be acceptable. I will bring my entire staff. As the aliens slowly filed out of the chamber, many were talking rapidly into communication devices. Word was spreading fast through Celestia Prime. The Deathworlders had brought something unexpected. Something old that worked better than new things. Something that did not need power or charging or careful calibration. Something that just worked every time no matter what. Daehyun and Jiwoo started packing their equipment back into the case. Jiwoo asked quietly, do you think we made an impression? Daehyun looked at the destroyed target. The briefing room was packed with aliens. What started as 50 curious observers had grown to over 300 beings. Word had spread quickly through the space station. The humans had done something surprising with their demonstration. Now everyone wanted to understand what it meant. Daehyun stood at the front of the room with Ji-woo beside him. Both looked uncomfortable with so much attention focused on them. Dr. Bo-Ram had taken over the presentation. Her holographic displays floated in the air, showing diagrams and numbers. The basic principle is very simple, Dr. Bo-Ram explained to the crowded room. You create a controlled explosion inside a confined metal tube. This explosion pushes a metal projectile forward at very high speed. When the projectile hits something, it transfers all that kinetic energy into the target, a Kelsian scientist objected. His three eyes blinked one after another as he studied the floating diagrams. But this is ancient technology. We used similar weapons 10,000 years ago in our history. Then we discovered energy weapons and advanced beyond such primitive methods. You moved in a different direction. Dr. Bo-Ram corrected him gently. Not necessarily a better direction. This caused angry sounds and movements in the crowd. Many aliens felt insulted. Ambassador Hyun held up his hand for silence. Please let Dr. Bo-Ram finish her presentation, Dr. Bo-Ram continued. Energy weapons are impressive, yes, but they have significant limitations. They need power sources that must be recharged regularly. They generate tremendous heat that requires cooling systems. They need exotic materials that are expensive and rare. They require complex maintenance by trained specialists, and most importantly, they cost a lot of money to produce. She pulled up a comparison chart. The numbers made several aliens lean forward in their seats to see better. A standard Vorlax plasma rifle costs 17,000 galactic credits to manufacture. A human M4 carbine costs about 800 credits. The ammunition is even cheaper. We can produce a single round for less than 1 credit each. War Master Kroll muttered from his seat. Cheap weapons for a cheap species. Ambassador Hyun responded smoothly. Affordable weapons that we can give to every soldier. Which brings us to an important question about scale and production capacity. Ji-woo stepped forward and brought up new data displays. Human industrial capacity for small arms ammunition is approximately 3 billion rounds per month. That is just from Earth alone. We also have colony worlds that manufacture their own ammunition supplies independently. The room became very quiet. Aliens looked at each other in disbelief. Commander Velthar spoke up, his translator crackling. 3 billion rounds per month. You can actually produce 3 billion of these self-contained projectiles every 30 days? That is our peacetime production rate, Ji-woo answered. During wartime, we can triple that output. We have done it before during our own conflicts. A Zentari military analyst stood up quickly. His chitin plates rattled with agitation. But surely your more powerful weapons use different technology. Your spacecraft weapons, your heavy artillery, those must use energy weapons or antimatter systems. Daehyun smiled slightly. Ji-woo, show them the progression. The holographic display changed to show a series of weapons. It started with a small pistol, then moved to rifles, then to larger machine guns. Each weapon was bigger than the last, but the basic principle stayed the same. Controlled explosions launching metal projectiles. Then the display showed massive artillery cannons. Tank guns, naval weapons mounted on warships. Each one was just a larger version of the same fundamental concept. This is a railgun from one of our destroyer-class warships, Ji-woo explained. It uses powerful electromagnets instead of chemical explosives, but the principle remains the same. Launch a solid projectile at extremely high velocity. The specifications appeared next to the image. The railgun could fire a projectile at over 7,000 meters per second. The kinetic energy released on impact was equal to a small nuclear explosion. Dr. Bo-Ram added, no exotic matter required. No antimatter containment systems. No quantum field generators. Just electricity, magnets, and a piece of dense metal moving very fast. War Master Kroll stood up. His massive frame towered over the seated aliens around him. You speak of warfare as if it is simple. As if fighting is just about throwing rocks harder and faster than your enemy. That is exactly what warfare is. Daehyun said directly. War is about delivering energy onto your target. We simply found a very efficient way to do it consistently. A Vorlax engineer sounded offended. But our weapons are elegant. They harness fundamental forces of the universe. Your weapons are brutal and primitive. Brutal, yes, Daehyun agreed without shame. Primitive? No. We have spent 700 years refining these weapon systems. making them more reliable, more accurate, more effective under any conditions. What you call primitive, we call perfected through centuries of experience. The door opened and Colonel Tae-Yang entered. He was older than most humans in the room. His hair was gray and his face looked like carved stone. He had fought in 3 major wars. When he spoke, even the aliens stopped to listen. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colonel Tae-Yang said in a clear voice, "let me make something very clear. What you witnessed yesterday was not a demonstration of our military power. It was a demonstration of our absolute basics. Every human soldier, from fresh recruits to 30-year veterans, carries a weapon similar to what you saw. That weapon is our starting point, not our peak capability." He gestured and a new hologram appeared. It showed a human soldier in full combat equipment. The sheer amount of gear was impressive. "One standard infantry soldier," the colonel continued. "One rifle with 210 rounds of ammunition. One sidearm pistol with 45 rounds. 4 fragmentation grenades. 2 smoke grenades. 1 anti-armor rocket. Body armor with ceramic plate inserts. Communications equipment. Medical supplies. All of this is standard issue equipment. Every soldier gets this as basic gear." The aliens began doing mental calculations. Some pulled out personal computing devices to run the numbers. Commander Velthar asked carefully, "How many soldiers does Earth actually field in total?" "That information is classified," Colonel Tae-Yang replied. "But I can tell you that we have more active soldiers than some species have total citizens in their entire population." A young Kelsian officer raised a tentacle to ask a question. "But surely this must be inefficient. All that weight to carry, all those complex logistics to manage?" Strategic analyst Minsu stood up from his seat. He was thin with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Logistics is actually what humans are exceptionally good at. Let me show you something interesting about supply chains." His hologram showed transportation networks, ships carrying cargo through space, trucks and trains moving supplies on planets. Everything connected in complex webs. A Vorlax plasma rifle needs its power cell replaced after approximately 500 shots. Those power cells require exotic materials that can only be mined from 3 known worlds in the entire galaxy. Your entire supply chain is fragile and vulnerable. If we cut those supply lines, your weapons become useless pieces of metal. The display changed to show human supply chains. They were more complex but more distributed. Human ammunition can be manufactured anywhere with basic industrial capacity. The raw materials are common elements found on almost any world. The production process is relatively simple. Our supply chain is extremely robust because we can manufacture ammunition almost anywhere. From almost any available materials, Colonel Tae-Yang added. "We thought carefully about vulnerability and fragility. We thought about what happens when supply lines get cut during war, when soldiers are trapped behind enemy lines, when your expensive equipment breaks down far from repair facilities. So we built weapons that keep working no matter what happens around them." Private Yunji, who had been quietly standing in the back, spoke up. "Sir, should I show them the durability test videos?" The colonel nodded his approval. The hologram showed a human rifle being completely submerged in thick mud until it was entirely covered. Then someone picked it up, shook off the excess mud, and immediately fired it. The weapon worked perfectly despite being full of dirt, Yunji explained. "We test our weapons by burying them in sand, by freezing them solid in ice, by dropping them from flying aircraft, by running them over with heavy trucks. If a weapon cannot survive being badly treated by a tired, scared soldier in terrible battlefield conditions, we do not accept it for military use." Kroll's translator made a sound that might have been grudging respect. "You design your weapons expecting them to be broken and mistreated by users?" "We design them expecting to be used by humans in combat," Daehyun said. "And humans are not always gentle or careful with equipment when people are trying to kill them," Jiwoo suggested. "Tell them about sustained fire capabilities." Dr. Boram pulled up another video. It showed a machine gun firing continuously without stopping. The metal barrel started glowing red from the intense heat. Then it turned orange. The gun kept firing steadily. After several hundred rounds, a soldier quickly removed the hot barrel and swapped in a cool replacement barrel. Then the gun immediately continued firing. Most galactic energy weapons overheat quickly during sustained fire, Dr. Boram explained. They require mandatory cooling periods between bursts. The tactical briefing room was designed to hold 50 beings comfortably. Over 200 aliens had somehow squeezed themselves inside. The rest watched from overflow rooms through video screens mounted on the walls. What began as simple curiosity had transformed into urgent military necessity. Colonel Tae-yang stood in the center of the room, surrounded by floating holographic displays. Next to him, strategic analyst Min-Soo organized data files with quick hand gestures. Ambassador Hyan watched from the side with a carefully neutral expression. This briefing had been planned for a small, select group. Now it felt like half the galaxy's military leadership was paying attention. "Let us discuss military doctrine and philosophy," Colonel Tae-yang began. "Most galactic militaries follow very similar patterns. You field elite warriors equipped with expensive, sophisticated weapons. You prioritize quality over quantity. Your weapons are undeniably impressive, but they are also relatively rare. You cannot afford to give every soldier a plasma cannon or molecular disruptor." He pulled up a comparison chart showing military force sizes. The Centauri fielded about 2 million soldiers. The Thakans maintained 4 million warriors. Most galactic species had military forces numbering in the low millions, which was considered quite large by galactic standards. Earth currently fields 50 million active soldiers, Colonel Tae-yang stated calmly, and we can properly arm and equip every single one of them. The room erupted into chaos. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. Translators struggled to keep up with the volume of simultaneous conversations. War Master Kroll's roar cut through all the noise. "That is impossible. No single world can possibly support such enormous numbers. Earth's total population is 8 billion individuals," Min-Soo said calmly over the noise. 50 million soldiers represents less than 1% of our total population. And that figure only counts our active military forces. We maintain reserve forces 3 times that size who can be mobilized if needed. Commander Velthar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a clear sign of intense thinking. The logistics alone would be staggering. How do you feed them all? How do you arm them? How do you transport them between worlds? That is precisely what humans are exceptionally good at, Min-Soo replied. Logistics, supply chain management, mass production at industrial scale. We have been refining these systems for centuries. A hologram appeared showing Earth's industrial capacity, factories covering entire regions, massive shipyards in orbit, manufacturing facilities on multiple colony worlds. The production numbers kept climbing higher and higher. Every single day, Earth alone produces approximately 100 million rounds of small arms ammunition, Min-Soo continued. That is just Earth. Our various colony worlds add another 50 million rounds daily. In one standard year, that totals more than 50 billion individual rounds of ammunition. A Kelshan economist was frantically working his personal calculator. The economic cost alone, the resources required, actually quite affordable, Min-Soo interrupted, because we mass-produce everything using automated systems. Economies of scale make each unit cheaper. Your plasma rifles are expensive because you manufacture them individually, each one carefully crafted by skilled technicians. Our rifles are inexpensive because we manufacture millions of them using fully automated assembly lines with minimal manual labor. Dr. Boram stepped forward to add technical information. Let me show you the maintenance differences between our respective weapon systems. She pulled up detailed maintenance schedules. A Vorlax plasma rifle required specialist maintenance every 30 days. Centauri bioweapons needed careful recalibration weekly. Most galactic weapons were delicate, precision instruments requiring expert care. A human rifle can operate for 6 months without any cleaning whatsoever and still function adequately, Dr. Boram said. This is not recommended practice, but it is possible in emergency situations. Basic field maintenance can be performed by any soldier with minimal training. Replacement parts are completely interchangeable and mass-produced. If a component breaks, you simply swap it out for a new one, a Centauri engineer observed. You treat your weapons like disposable tools rather than precision instruments. We treat them like tools that must function reliably in the absolute worst possible conditions, Daehyun corrected from where he stood. Because those are the conditions where we actually use them. In mud, in sand, in pouring rain, in deep snow, in places where your sophisticated energy weapons would fail within minutes of exposure. Colonel Tae-yang pulled up combat footage from human military operations. Marines fighting in a driving rainstorm with their weapons working flawlessly despite being completely soaked. Soldiers in a desert environment with rifles caked in sand but still firing normally. Arctic warfare footage showing troops fighting in negative 40-degree temperatures. Environmental adaptability is critical, Colonel Tae-yang explained. Our weapons function in any environment where humans themselves can survive, and humans can survive in almost any environment imaginable. That realization was genuinely terrifying to several species present. Humans were Deathworlders. They could operate in environmental conditions that would quickly kill most other species, and their weapons functioned perfectly in those same deadly conditions. War Master Kroll stood up, his powered armor creaking with the movement. You have discussed your infantry weapons extensively, but what about armored vehicles? What about artillery? Surely you must use proper advanced technology for heavy weapon systems. Colonel Tae-Yang smiled, though the expression was not particularly comforting. Jiwoo, please show them the Mark 7 main battle tank. Private Jiwoo pulled up an image of a human tank. It was a brutal-looking war machine, all sharp angles and heavy armor plating. The main gun barrel was enormous in proportion to the vehicle. This is our current generation main battle tank, Jiwoo explained. The primary gun fires a 120mm projectile. It can penetrate 800mm of solid armor at a range of 2,000 meters. Still using kinetic projectiles? Felthar asked, though he already knew the answer. Kinetic projectiles, Jiwoo confirmed. Specifically depleted uranium penetrators. Essentially a very dense metal dart traveling at 1,700 meters per second. When it strikes enemy armor, it punches straight through using pure kinetic energy. A Thaken armor specialist spoke up defensively. Our plasma cannons can melt through any armor material. Can they function during a sandstorm? Daehyun challenged. Can they hit targets 4 kilometers away? Can they fire 20 times consecutively without stopping to cool down? The Thaken specialist had no answer. Jiwoo continued. Our tanks carry 40 main gun rounds plus 3 separate machine guns with several thousand rounds of ammunition. They can fight continuously for hours without pause. The armor is composite ceramic and depleted uranium. It is so incredibly heavy that most species could not even lift a single armor plate. But we built engines powerful enough to move all that mass at high speed. Colonel Tae-Yang pulled up more images. Artillery pieces with barrels as long as small trees. Rocket systems that could blanket entire grid squares with explosives. Mobile guns that could shoot targets over the horizon. This is a standard artillery battery, the colonel said. 6 guns. Each gun can fire 4 rounds per minute sustainably. Each round weighs 40 kilograms and has an effective range of 30 kilometers. A single battery can deliver over 1,000 kilograms of high explosives per minute onto any target within range. A Zentari logistics officer asked with clear dread. And you maintain how many of these artillery batteries total? That specific number is classified military information, Colonel Tae-Yang said. But I can tell you it is measured in thousands of batteries, not dozens. The full implications were slowly sinking in for everyone present. This was not just about individual weapons being effective. This was an entire military philosophy built completely around mass production and overwhelming firepower. Where other species fielded elite soldiers with exotic weapons, humans fielded millions of soldiers with reliable weapons and literal mountains of ammunition. Private Yoonji raised her hand politely. Sir, should we inform them about the recent doctrine revision? The colonel nodded approval. Excellent point. Approximately 50 years ago, we comprehensively revised our entire military doctrine. We studied standard galactic tactics extensively and made several significant changes to adapt our forces for fighting non-human enemies. What specific changes? Felthar asked with obvious concern. We significantly increased standard ammunition loads for all soldiers, Colonel Tae-Yang replied. When we learned that most galactic species use energy weapons with relatively limited rates of fire, we realized we could achieve victory through sheer volume of fire. Our soldiers now carry even more ammunition than they did previously. Minsu pulled up a tactical simulation. It showed a human infantry squad facing a Thaken warrior squad. The Thakans had individually more powerful weapons, significantly better armor, and were physically stronger. Observe carefully, Minsu said as he started the simulation. The simulation ran its course. The Thakans fired their plasma weapons in measured powerful bursts. The humans responded with fully automatic fire, hundreds of rounds per minute from multiple weapons. General Kyung-suk was not someone who wasted time on pleasantries. She had fought in 2 major wars, lost close friends to 3 different enemies, and spent 30 hard years climbing through military command ranks. Her hair had gone gray. Her face was lined with old scars. Her eyes saw everything and missed nothing. When she entered the secured briefing room, every human immediately stood at attention and every alien fell completely silent. "At ease," she said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "Everyone sit down. We have considerable ground to cover today." The briefing room was smaller today, deliberately limited to senior military officers and top strategic analysts. Commander Velthar was present, along with War Master Kroll and about a dozen other high-ranking alien commanders. This was no longer a simple demonstration or presentation. This was serious military discussion between powers. Weapons specialist Jamin stood beside a long table covered with various equipment. Jamin was younger than most of the officers present, but he understood weapons the way some beings understood art. He could disassemble and reassemble a rifle blindfolded, and could construct explosive devices from common household items. "Yesterday we showed you our basic, standard-issue weapons," General Kyung-suk began without preamble. "Today, if you are genuinely ready, we will show you what humans actually deploy when situations become truly serious." She nodded toward Jamin to begin. He picked up a small green cylinder from the table. It was about the size of a human fist with a metal lever clipped tightly to the side. "This is a standard fragmentation grenade," Jamin explained professionally. "It contains approximately 180 grams of high explosive compound surrounded by a serrated steel casing. When detonated, the steel casing fragments into hundreds of sharp pieces of shrapnel that move outward at extremely high velocity." "A thrown explosive device," a Kelshan officer observed. "We have conceptually similar weapons in our arsenal. How many does each of your individual soldiers carry?" Jamin asked directly. "Typically 1 or 2. They are quite expensive to produce and require very careful handling." "Our soldiers carry 4 grenades as completely standard equipment," Jamin said. "Each grenade costs approximately 15 credits to manufacture. We produce them by the millions every month." He set down the grenade carefully and picked up a longer cylinder with small fins attached to one. "And this is a 40mm grenade designed to be fired from an underbarrel launcher attachment. Available in high explosive, fragmentation, smoke, illumination, or even non-lethal variants. A properly trained soldier can accurately fire 6 of these per minute to ranges up to 400 meters." The aliens were taking detailed notes now. Velthar's mandibles clicked in his characteristic thoughtful pattern. "You seem to have developed many variations of explosive-based weapons." "Explosives are extremely versatile tools," Jamin agreed readily. He moved to a longer tubular weapon on the table. "This is an anti-tank rocket launcher. Single-use disposable design. Fires a shaped explosive charge that can penetrate over 500 millimeters of solid armor. Manufacturing cost is approximately 400 credits per unit. Every standard infantry squad carries 2 of them. Disposable?" A Thakan engineer sounded genuinely offended. "You use a weapon system exactly once and then simply discard it?" "It is significantly cheaper than engineering a reusable launcher system," Jamin explained. "And soldiers do not have to carry the empty launcher after firing, which reduces weight and increases tactical mobility." General Kyung-suk pulled up a large holographic display. "Now let us discuss the concept of force escalation. Most galactic militaries maintain very clear distinctions between infantry weapons and heavy weapon systems. Humans deliberately blur those traditional lines." The display showed a logical progression, from basic rifles to heavy machine guns to grenade launchers to mortars to full artillery to guided missiles. Each step was a natural evolution, each weapon system designed to fill a specific tactical role. "This is a mortar system," Jamin said, pointing to a simple tube with a base plate. "Operated by a crew of 3 soldiers. Can fire 20 rounds per minute sustainably. Effective range of 7 kilometers. Each round weighs 3 kilograms and contains high explosive filler. Each infantry company maintains its own dedicated mortar section," Kyung-suk added. "That means every 600 soldiers have organic immediate fire support that can reach targets 7 kilometers away. They do not need to request air support or wait for artillery. They have their own integrated fire support." She changed the display to show massive artillery pieces, enormous guns with barrels like tree trunks. "We have already discussed our artillery capabilities. Now let me show you the ammunition variety we have developed." The display filled with dozens of different artillery shell types. High explosive, smoke, illumination, cluster munitions, precision-guided, sensor-fused, thermobaric. 1 gun platform, countless possible roles, Kyung-suk explained. We can use the exact same artillery piece to create smoke screens, illuminate target areas, deliver precision strikes against point targets, or blanket large areas with anti-personnel submunitions. Versatility through ammunition selection rather than weapon replacement. A Zentari tactical officer spoke up with concern. This is quite impressive, but surely vulnerable to counter-battery fire. Our sensor systems can track artillery projectiles back to their point of origin. Our systems can do that as well, Kyung-suk said, which is precisely why our artillery operates on shoot-and-move tactical doctrine. Fire a few rounds from one position, immediately relocate to a new position, fire again from there. By the time your counter-battery fire arrives at the first location, our guns are already gone. Kroll growled deeply. What about armored vehicle survivability? You showed us your tanks yesterday. Explain their defensive systems. Jamin pulled up a detailed cross-section image of a tank's layered armor system. Our armor uses multiple layers. Composite ceramics for initial impact resistance, depleted uranium for density and penetration resistance, and reactive armor plates on the exterior. Reactive armor plates? Felthar asked with obvious interest. Explosive charges mounted on the outside of the tank, Jamin explained matter-of-factly. When an enemy projectile impacts the armor, the explosive detonates outward, disrupting and deflecting the attack before it can penetrate the main armor. The aliens stared at him in stunned silence. You deliberately attach explosives to your protective armor, Kroll said slowly, as if confirming he understood correctly. To protect against other explosions. It works extremely effectively, Jamin said with a simple shrug. Reactive armor can defeat most standard anti-tank weapons, and it is significantly cheaper than manufacturing thicker base armor. A Vorlax engineer muttered, You use explosives for absolutely everything. We use the most appropriate tool for each specific job, Kyung-suk corrected firmly. And explosives happen to be very effective tools. They are simple to manufacture. They are reliable. They are scalable from tiny to enormous. We can make them from common chemicals available anywhere. We can vary the size from a firecracker to a city-destroying bomb. And they function consistently under any conditions. She pulled up new images showing various aircraft. Our fighter and bomber aircraft all use kinetic-based weapon systems, primarily rotary cannons and guided missiles. The missiles are particularly interesting because they incorporate advanced artificial intelligence. The display showed a cruise missile in flight. It followed terrain contours, staying low to avoid radar detection, adjusting its flight path around obstacles automatically. This missile has an operational range of 1,500 kilometers, Kyung-suk explained. It can loiter in a designated area waiting for targets to appear. It can be retargeted during flight based on new intelligence. It can coordinate with other missiles to strike multiple targets simultaneously. And the warhead contains 400 kilograms of high explosive. One single missile? A Kelshan officer asked uncertainly. One missile, Kyung-suk confirmed. But our bomber aircraft carry 20 of them. Our destroyer-class ships carry 90. Our cruiser-class ships carry 200. Calculate those numbers. The mathematics were genuinely terrifying. A single human cruiser could deliver 40 metric tons of high explosives to 200 separate targets, spread across thousands of kilometers. What about your defensive systems? Veltar asked. You mentioned point defense capabilities yesterday. Jamin pulled up combat footage. A human warship surrounded by dozens of incoming missiles. Then the point defense system activated. Rapid-fire cannons created a visible wall of explosive shells. Every single incoming missile was intercepted and destroyed before reaching the ship. 6,000 rounds per minute per gun, Jamin stated. Each ship has multiple guns providing overlapping coverage of all approach vectors. We conducted testing against saturated missile attacks. 200 missiles fired simultaneously from multiple directions. We successfully intercepted and destroyed 198 of them. What happened to the other 2 missiles? Someone asked. They hit the ship, Jamin admitted honestly, which is precisely why we also have extremely heavy armor protection. The briefing continued methodically. Mines that could destroy vehicles or even spacecraft. The closing ceremony of the military exposition was usually a formal, predictable affair. Speeches were given. Awards were presented. Diplomatic pleasantries were exchanged. This year felt completely different. The atmosphere in the Grand Hall was charged with tension and possibility. Delegates clustered in small groups, talking quietly but urgently. Business deals were being negotiated in corners. Long-standing alliances were being quietly reconsidered. Ambassador Hyun stood with General Kyung-suk, watching the crowd carefully. 3 days ago, the human delegation had been an afterthought, barely noticed. Now they were the absolute center of attention. 17 formal negotiation requests so far, Hyun said, checking his datapad. 23 requests for follow-up briefings. 8 different species want to establish military cooperation agreements immediately. And the Centauri just formally offered to open joint weapons research facilities with us. What about the Thakins? Kyung-suk asked. War Master Kroll requested a private meeting. He wants human military advisors to help completely reform their warrior training programs. Kyung-suk smiled slightly. From open mockery to desperate requests for assistance in just 3 days. That might actually be a galactic record. Across the crowded hall, Commander Velthar was speaking with a large group of Centauri military officials. His 4 eyes kept drifting back toward the human delegation. Finally, he excused himself politely and approached them directly. Ambassador Hyun, General Kyung-suk. Velthar's translator made his natural clicking voice sound formal and respectful. My government wishes to open discussions about a comprehensive military partnership. Technology sharing agreements, joint training exercises, and mutual defense pacts. We would very much welcome such discussions, Hyun replied smoothly. Though I should note clearly that certain technologies will remain classified for security reasons. Of course, we fully understand, Velthar said. You have shown us more than enough to know that partnership is strongly preferable to alternative relationships. That was diplomatic language for not wanting to become enemies. Kyung-suk appreciated his directness. Your species genuinely interests me, Velthar continued thoughtfully. You evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill you. You fought brutal wars against each other for thousands of years. You developed weapons fully capable of destroying your own civilization. Yet somehow you survived it all. You learned from it. And now you offer that hard-earned knowledge to the wider galaxy. We learned extremely hard lessons, Kyung-suk said. We would much rather others did not have to learn them through the same painful experiences. A commotion near the main entrance drew their attention. War Master Kroll was arriving, and he had brought his entire senior command staff with him. The massive Thakin pushed through the crowd easily, his imposing presence making other species step aside automatically. Humans, Kroll rumbled. He sounded noticeably different than before, less arrogant and dismissive, more respectful. My government wishes to purchase weapons and training services. We formally acknowledge that your military philosophy has considerable merit. That was probably the closest thing to an apology that a proud Thakin warrior could manage. We can certainly arrange that, Hyun said smoothly. Colonel Tae Yang will be happy to discuss specific training programs with your staff. Kroll's eyes fixed on Daehyun and Jiwoo, who were standing quietly with the other junior officers. Those 2 soldiers, the ones who first demonstrated your weapons, they showed absolutely no fear. No hesitation at all. Is this common among all human soldiers? Common enough, Daehyun said, stepping forward. We train constantly until our weapons become natural extensions of ourselves, until using them is as instinctive as breathing. This is precisely what we need, Kroll said seriously. We have strong warriors. We have physical strength. But we lack your practical efficiency, your pragmatic thinking about warfare. Throughout the hall, similar conversations were happening simultaneously. The Kelshan wanted to purchase ammunition manufacturing equipment and expertise. The Vorlax were extremely interested in logistics training. Smaller species were asking about defensive weapons and protection training programs. The humans had become the most sought-after military partners in the entire galaxy practically, overnight. Private Yoonji approached Hyun with another datapad. Sir, the Galactic Council is requesting an emergency session. They want to formally discuss reclassifying Earth had arrived in the galactic community as a serious power, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again. 2 years passed. The changes became more visible across known space. Human-designed weapons were now standard equipment for dozens of species. The simple, reliable designs had proven themselves repeatedly. Energy weapons were still used for specialized purposes, but kinetic weapons had made an unexpected comeback across the galaxy. Commander Velthar commanded a mixed fleet now. Centauri ships using human railguns alongside their traditional bioweapons. The combination was devastatingly effective. His fleet had successfully defended 3 colonies from pirate attacks without losing a single ship. War Master Kroll had transformed from a proud warrior into a thoughtful military commander. He still had his strength and courage, but now he combined them with human tactical thinking. His reformed warrior cadre had won the last 4 war games competitions. Other Thakan commanders were studying his methods carefully. The smaller species flourished under the new balance of power. The Keltian Confederation had purchased manufacturing rights for human rifles and ammunition. They now produced their own weapons locally. Their military had grown from barely adequate to genuinely capable. Their neighbors treated them with new respect. Ambassador Hyan worked tirelessly from his new office on Celestia Prime. Earth now maintained a permanent diplomatic presence at the Galactic Hub. Trade agreements multiplied. Cultural exchanges increased. Human teachers traveled to alien worlds. Alien students came to Earth. General Kyung-suk retired from active military service. She spent her final years training the next generation of human officers. She taught them not just about weapons and tactics, but about responsibility, about the cost of war, about the importance of making strong allies rather than creating new enemies. Dae-hyun eventually became a training instructor himself. He taught alien soldiers the basics of human weapons and tactics. He was patient with them, remembering how strange everything had seemed at first. His students respected him because he never made them feel inferior for not understanding immediately. Ji-woo transferred to military intelligence. His technical skills and understanding of both human and alien systems made him invaluable. He helped coordinate joint operations between human and alien forces. The partnerships worked because people like Ji-woo built bridges of understanding. Dr. Boram continued her research. She worked on ways to make weapons even more reliable and efficient. But she also worked on defensive technologies, ways to protect soldiers better, ways to save lives. Her innovation saved thousands of beings across multiple species. Private Yunji rose through the ranks faster than anyone expected. She had a gift for logistics and organization. Within 5 years, she was coordinating supply chains for entire battle groups. Her efficiency became legendary. Other species sent their logistics officers to train under her. The galaxy learned to see humans differently. Not as primitive Deathworlders, not as terrifying war machines, but as practical survivors who understood both the necessity and the cost of violence, as allies who kept their promises, as teachers willing to share knowledge, as friends worth having. Celestia Prime held another military exposition 5 years after the one that changed everything. This time, the human delegation did not arrive late. They did not need to prove themselves. They were invited as honored guests and respected partners. The demonstration chamber where Dae-hyun had first fired that simple rifle had been preserved. It was now called the Chamber of Understanding. Young officers from all species visited it to learn about the day the galaxy's assumptions were shattered. The brass cartridge from that first demonstration was displayed in a protective case. Next to it, a simple plaque with words in multiple languages. Different does not mean inferior. Practical does not mean primitive. Survival teaches the hardest lessons. Commander Velthar stood in that chamber during the new exposition. He brought his own students to see it. Young Zentari warriors eager to learn. This is where it started, Velthar told them. This is where we learned to see past our assumptions. Where we learned that the Deathworlders had something valuable to teach us. One young warrior asked, "What did they teach us, Commander?" Velthar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. They taught us that elegance and effectiveness are not the same thing. That complexity is not always better than simplicity. That the best weapon is not the most impressive one, but the one that works when everything else fails. And most importantly, they taught us that understanding costs is the first step toward wisdom. Across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, humans and aliens worked together, trained together, sometimes fought together. The partnerships were not always perfect. There were misunderstandings and disagreements, but they worked through them because both sides wanted to succeed.